From Fox 8 Sports, this is the Overtime Podcast.
Welcome to the Fox 8 Overtime Podcast. I am your host for the day, Andre Johnson Jr. Joining me from Newport Beach, California is Sean Fazende. Now, before we get into this podcast, be sure to like, share, rate, review. If you're watching on YouTube, make sure you hit that subscribe button so you get that bell notification every time we post a new episode and you don't miss out on any of that fire content. And if you're watching on the Gulf Coast Sports and Entertainment Network, hello. I'm glad you have found us here. Here for me, being in Fox 8 Studios, of course, but for Sean, you're still out in California. The Saints just played their preseason game against the Chargers a few days ago. They're still out there practicing for the rest of this week, Sean. And how's things going out there? I hear some constriction by you.
Yeah. Well, first off, let me apologize to everyone watching right now. Beautiful right there to my right. To my left, there is a massive amount of construction going on. It was not quite as loud over here the last couple of days, and wouldn't you know it, they started to get really, really loud right when we were about to start this podcast. It is what it is. You got to deal with what you got to deal with. That's life on the road. But nonetheless, other than that, been a good stretch. Saints about to get their, depending on when you watch this, their second to last practice out here at UC Irvine. Been a decent stretch out here. We've learned a lot. They've had to deal with a lot since we've been out here. Different climate, different ebb and flow to practice. So overall, it's been a pretty good trip out here to the West Coast. How about you?
Man, it's been good back here, but, you know, for the Saints, one thing that hasn't been good, and not just for the Saints, but for Saints fans, they're probably feeling a bit of deja vu right now because the theme all last season after week 2 of the season were injuries. We saw so many prominent players dropping for the Saints, and just a week into the preseason, that injury bug has struck again. You know, so far, Will Clapp, offensive lineman, goes on IR. Trevor Penning, who recently moved to left guard, he's out with an injury. Kellen Moore says he'll miss some time going forward. And maybe the biggest injury of all, cornerback Alontae Taylor, also out with an injury. He'll miss some time as well. So that's 3 injuries that we find out about in about a 24 to 48-hour span. Sean, with that injury bug starting to bite, they weren't able to survive it last year. Can they survive these early injuries right now?
Well, they can't survive it if it goes well into the season.
Yeah.
So let's just start where I think it impacts the Saints the most, and that is up front. Trevor Penning's dealing with the foot or toe injury right now. Looks like he'll be out for a couple of weeks. Hopefully he is back in time for the start of the season, which is obviously optimistic, unlike some of the other injuries that they've had to deal with. So let's start right there with the offensive line, because the depth has taken a huge blow. Because we talked about not just the investment up front along this offensive line for the Saints with the starting 5 and the front 5, but we talked about, at least I have a lot, just how much I liked the depth, because it felt like they really honed in on not just a front line, but guys they can rely on if someone goes down. Well, 2 of your depth pieces, one may have made the team, one I think was a shoo-in to make the team, are now gone for the year. Number 1 being Will Clapp, the center. Number 2 being Nick Saldiveri, who was lost obviously a couple of weeks ago. So now, I had my roster projection. I had 9 guys. Well, two of the 9 are now gone for the season. So clearly that makes a huge problem, makes a huge issue, or creates a huge issue for the Saints offensive line, because you want that depth, because those are the guys you were counting on if the starters went down. Fortunately, only 1 starter is down right now, but it won't be down for a long period of time. But nonetheless, that's a huge blow to the Saints offensive line. Now, we should point out, with Trevor Penning down, Dylan Radins, who they brought in, who's been a starter in this league, he has filled in at left guard. He even said after practice yesterday, as that drill behind me just keeps going and going and going from the construction site. He had a rough game. He played right tackle, then he played left guard. He was the one responsible for the Spencer Rattler sack. He got beat on that play. He owned up to it. But I think he's more naturally natural of an interior player. So I think at left guard, we were talking about him potentially being a starter if the Trevor Penning situation didn't work out, because when he was signed, we didn't know at that point that Trevor Penning was going to move inside to left guard. So him at left guard, I actually feel comfortable with Trevor Penning down. We should mention Trevor Penning actually had a pretty good start to the game. If you go back and watch the film, which I did. So hopefully that injury does not set him back too far. because they're going to need him. I think he is one of the best 5 on the team, and I think he really is starting to settle in at that left guard position. But behind those 6 now, because with Penning down and Radden's up, or Radden's up, who are your depth guys? Is it Lemieux? Possibly. Is it Josiah Ezram? I'm here to tell you, Josiah Ezram has led the team in false starts at practice. He's gotten booted off of plays because he's false started probably more than any other player on this team. Who else is behind those guys? Landon Young, that's a guy you can count on, I guess, certainly for depth type situations. So the depth is taking a hit with the two quality reserves out for the season. Hopefully the Penning situation does not linger into week 1, week 2, week 3, because you look at the legitimate timetable for him. We'll get a more specific one when Kellen Moore speaks, hopefully, after practice today. Sometimes he's vague, but at least he tells you what's going on. Hopefully he's back for week 1. You don't want that to linger past that because, again, that tests your depth. And obviously you want your starters, if you can have that, because they want this to be the starting five. They want the starting 5 to be not just good, but the strength of the team. And like we've always said, it should be the strength of the team. When you have 4 first-round picks and a second-round pick who graded the highest of any at his position a season ago in PFF, I'm talking about Eric McCoy, obviously. So, little tough right now, and they kind of all came at once. And I even asked Kellen Moore about, is it challenging just to practice? Because you gotta move some guys around. You gotta sign some guys. They signed like 4 players yesterday or 3 players yesterday, and can those guys practice right away? They don't really know what they're doing. That can create a little more problems, than you would hope for. So you just got to manage. But it is sort of a bummer because you go into this with the idea of staying healthy, and here you're out here on the West Coast, and a few guys have gone down one by one. So offensive line wise, that's where I wanted to start. So I think offensive line, that's where I'm most concerned right now because the depth has been tested.
Absolutely, the offensive line was the first thing I thought about too because last year, when we were talking about their O-line, we all said that their O-line was by far the biggest concern that we had on this team. And the main reason wasn't necessarily the starters, it was the lack of depth, and that showed in them having to rely on guys like Lucas Patrick, who had to step in and play a big role before he got hurt. Nick Saldivari, who wound up getting hurt at one point. Landon Young. They pulled Connor McGovern off of the Jets practice squad, and he was starting at center the very next week. That's how taxed the offensive line was from an injury perspective last year. So now you look at them kind of bringing in some depth, but Will Clapp going down for the season, he was the depth. Like, he was one of the major depth pieces that they brought in so that they didn't have the issues they had last year. So Will Clapp's injury was already big, but his injury made Trevor Penning's injury even bigger because maybe Will Clapp was one of the guys who you can plug in because he's a versatile guy who can play all across the line. Maybe Will Clapp is in that conversation to maybe take over one of those spots with Trevor Penning being out. But now with Will Clapp out, it's like, all right, now you have to go deeper into your depth chart, which, right now isn't deep enough with the early injuries that they've been hit with. So it's really devastating especially if this is a longer-term injury for the Saints, but also for Trevor Penning, someone who, obviously, from a personal perspective, I'm rooting for him as a Saint. Trevor Penning has been kind of flirting with that bust tag for a long time, and it sort of felt like he was starting to find his footing last season at right tackle because he was moved from left tackle to right tackle. Now he's moved to left guard. Saints don't pick up his 5th-year option, so we've talked about it. This is potentially Trevor Penning's last chance, to really make a mark, not just for this team, but for the other 31 teams in the league. This was a big year for him, so hopefully he can get healthy and get back on the field because the Saints having a rookie quarterback and a second-year quarterback, going back and forth in this quarterback battle, a running game that's very, there's a lot of uncertainty in it after Alvin Kamara. You really need those guys up front to be your strength. And when we were looking at them healthy, we said this is the best 5 that they can make. The O-line might be their strength this year, but if they're banged up, it's a problem for everybody else, Sean.
Yeah, and look, I'll take it one step further.
Go ahead.
When I watched the tape over and I saw Penning is in a really good headspace right now. You could tell he really feels connected to the new position switch. He feels connected where he feels like his skill set is being highlighted more. It's better suited for this. I would even say he might be the best run blocker on the team. And this is going to be a run-first team this year, Andre. This is going to be a run-first team. It has to be. It has to be. Well, given the way you're built, given where the head coach just came from, given what you have at quarterback, it's either going to be a rookie or a guy who's basically a rookie in Spencer Rattler. So you're going to have to run the football. Trevor Penning, to me, I think when it comes to run blocking, might be the best on the team. When you talk about what he's able to do when he gets his hands on linebackers, when he's pulling, all those things. And I think he knows that. That's his strength. And being inside at guard, he's less exposed in the pass blocking game. So hopefully this is just a minor setback. And for all intents and purposes, the reports we've seen, it is minor. But toe or foot injuries can be tricky. You hope it heals properly and he's back on the field in a timely manner, because you don't want this to linger into 4 weeks, 6 weeks, 8 weeks, and we're asking questions like, where's Penning? Where's Penning? Where's Penning? Because I think if they want to have any sort of success offensively, they're going to have to run the football, and to run the football at their best, I think they're going to need Trevor Penning.
Absolutely. And, you mentioned the quarterbacks, and we'll get to them in a few minutes, because I know you were watching a lot of film on them recently. But before we get to them, we got to swing it over to the defensive side of the field to talk about the other big injury. And to me, this one's even bigger than the offensive line injuries, and that's cornerback Alontae Taylor.
Yeah, look, this is a guy who's been really healthy throughout his career. Just watch. I have to go back and look, but I think he was one of the ones that just kind of survived. He was one of the few survivors last year, because there was a lot of guys going down last year, and he was able to survive. And he's going to be highlighted a lot in this Brandon Staley system as that star, nickel, apex defender. There's different names for it. And he's done some outside work. He's done some inside work. And he's the guy that he got banged up at the end of Friday's practice, which is obviously unfortunate. It didn't even happen in the game. He didn't even play in the game. It's a groin. That's a soft tissue injury. Oh, man, those are difficult. And look, they had a few soft tissue injuries when they got out here last year. Sometimes it happens with the shift in the climate. Hopefully that is not a long period of time. That's another one. I don't need to see Alontae Taylor the rest of preseason, or Trevor Penning the rest of preseason. Let those guys get rested up and get healthy. But what's interesting about that is, with Alontae Taylor playing the nickel, you'll wonder, okay, who is the next guy that can play the nickel? Well, can you go 3 safeties and Justin Reed is that guy? Well, maybe, but you don't want to do that in every single matchup. To me, the guy I've seen has been Ugo Amade, number 0, for the Saints. He's a guy that kind of got lost in the shuffle a little bit. He's a guy that kind of got, when you're doing your roster stuff and you're checking the roster and you're doing your projections, he was a guy that a little bit forgotten, at least my own fault there. But you watch him now, it's good to have a guy like that, because he can play safety, he can play nickel. There's been a couple times at practice where he's timed blitzes from that nickel spot really well, a lot like Alontae Taylor did last year early in the season when he had, the 4 sacks a season ago to start the season. He was leading the NFL in sacks at one point. It was crazy early in the season. So that's the guy I would lean on if I were the Saints, because outside of him, I'm not even sure who they could truly turn to be a true nickel/star defender. Now, he is very undersized, Ugo Amadi is. Alontae Taylor's not a big guy, but he's taller than, obviously, Ugo Amadi. But I do think the veteran experience, his versatility, that's probably, they're counting on Dylan Radins to help with Trevor Penning. I think with Alontae Taylor, it's probably going to be Ugo Amadi, number 0 for the Saints.
Yeah, and with the offensive line, we talked about the depth, or in this case, lack of depth. There's no position on this team that you have less depth in, to me, than cornerback. Alontae Taylor is probably the only one in that cornerback room that I was certain about this season, if he was playing the nickel. Kool-Aid McKinstry, he had his ups and downs as a rookie. Now, he's had a spectacular training camp. He's looking like he's in a position to potentially take a big step into year 2, but we've still got to see it. Quincy Riley, someone else who's been good in training camp, but again, he's a rookie. You're asking a lot from him. And, when you look after Alontae, you've got Kool-Aid, you've got Quincy Riley. You talked about Ugo Amadi. There's Isaac Yadam. There's Rajon Wright. There's Rico Payton. But any of those guys outside of maybe Kool-Aid, can you say with certainty, oh yeah, we can have a lot of confidence in them? And the Saints are a team that's going to play a lot of 3 cornerback sets. And if they do have to go with 3 corners, if Alontae can't play in week 1, your 3 might be, Kool-Aid McKinstry, Isaac Yadam, and Ugo Amadi. Maybe Quincy Riley, the rookie. And that's not exactly a great position to be in, especially when you look down the schedule for this team. they see some receivers this year. You know, they see a Marvin Harrison Jr., they see a Cooper Kupp, a Jackson Smith and Jigba, Malik Neighbors, DJ Moore, Mike Evans, Puka Nacua, Devontae Adams, Drake London, Tyreek Hill, Garrett Wilson, Jalen Waddle. Having a veteran corner out there, because at this point, Alontae Taylor, as young as he seems compared to the rest of that room, he is your veteran corner.
Right.
Having him out there, you know, and not just the passing game, but also the way that he can impact, you know, stopping the run, which is one of the major reasons why the Saints like him at that nickel spot. If he's not there, that is the biggest blow that the Saints could potentially have right now.
Yeah. Just that versatility that, he's a good player. He's a really, really good player. Hopefully this is minor. I will say with this, these soft tissue injuries, we don't know exactly what it is. He just said groin. Do not come back too soon. Do not come back too soon. Absolutely. Because you don't want to have that linger all season long. And that's generally what happens in these types of situations. You get a little desperate because you need the bodies to be on the field to have your chance to win. But you come back too soon and you might get the short-term help, but it ends up getting re-aggravated and re-injured again. As I'm seeing a lot of people walk past me, you probably will notice as we're out here at Inspiration Point. So, yeah, but I'm right there with you. Again, hopefully it did not sound like it was catastrophic for Alontae Taylor. I think the way Kellen Moore described it was they'll be out a little while. I'm still not quite good at Kellen Moore translation yet. I mean, we had the same coach for a long time around here, and then we had a kind of a protege of his, so we can kind of read between the lines. I can't really do that yet with Kellen Moore, but I hope he's back in enough time to get back, because they've got what? They've got 2 more preseason games, and they've got that week off, and then they've got September 7th. So you're a little less than a month away from the start of the regular season. Hopefully you get enough rehab, get enough treatment to be ready to go, because he is going to be counted on, because if he is out, the ripple effect that has into your secondary, particularly the cornerback position, could be huge, because you mentioned the names. I mean, look, they had the draft pick in Quincy Riley. You have Kool-Aid, who I think has had a really good camp. Yadam's had a really good camp, if we're being honest. But then you get one less with Alontae Taylor. I think we could all agree Alontae Taylor is probably the best player of that group. Then you get to names like, Rejjon Wright. There was an undrafted, his name escapes me right now, the undrafted player out of one of the Dakotas. I mean, that's where you're getting to at that point. So we'll see if they address it to get some more players here on the roster while they're out. But, yeah, it's not fun. It's not fun when you deal with injuries, but every team is dealing with it right now. I know it feels like the Saints have dealt with more than most teams, especially when you're coming off of last year, but this is their reality. They have to overcome it and they have to deal with it.
Yeah, every NFL team is going to deal with injuries at some point. Some are dealing with it right now, and the Saints are no exception. But when you turn on the film from last year, especially early in the season when Alontae was really dominating in that nickel, you can see how big of an impact on this team he's had. And Speaking of film, you went back and watched the All-22 film from the Saints preseason game against the Chargers. Now, Monday, we talked all about the quarterbacks. We talked about, Shuck, the biggest question being, has he surpassed Spencer Rattler on the depth chart? I say yes. You say it's about what and what after that preseason game. But has your opinion changed at all after rewatching the film?
Well, look, after rewatching the film, I could confidently say Tyler Shuck had the better game by a lot. Spencer Rattler was okay. He was not great. He was not terrible. But as I went back and watched it, I even asked Kellen Moore about him specifically after practice on Tuesday. He said he didn't have any wow moments, and that's true. He kind of blamed it on the circumstance. But when I went back and watched it, he made some good decisions early, a couple of nice decisions with his feet. But to not get that red zone touchdown or any kind of points in that red zone opportunity was very disheartening. And look, he wasn't terrible in that sequence, but there was one play that he missed in that sequence, and I've talked about it a couple times, but it really showed up on film. I even tweeted about it. The second and goal from the 5-yard line, they're running kind of a mesh double cross, from each side underneath. It's a textbook Kellen Moore play. Mason Tipton's open. He kind of reads the coverage. He sits down. There's a hole. And you can see Spencer Rattler is looking at him. He's got a little bit of pressure in his face, but he's deep enough to where he can make that throw. It's a fairly simple throw, and Tipton's probably going to catch it, and he's probably going to get to maybe the 2-yard line, which would have given him 2 cracks at the end zone from the 2-yard line as opposed to 1 on 4th down. So that was a miss. There was another miss when he had it was a 3rd down he converted with his legs, but if you go back and watch it, there were 2 guys, really wide open on that play. And I think that was the one he was alluding to after the game where he said he probably missed that read. He probably didn't have to tuck that one. He probably could have delivered a strike to one of his guys. It was the tight end, and I think it was Cedric Wilson was the other guy, both working kind of the seam area of the field where he could have delivered a big play. I would just say, look, Rattler stayed fairly true to his overall sort of skill set, scouting reports since he's been with the Saints. But one thing that's still he's got to get better at, and this was a problem last year, and it's going to be a problem until he fixes it. He's got to finish stronger. It felt like his performance really tailed off after that red zone opportunity. He just did not feel completely comfortable. And he was not making the same, he just wasn't seeing the field as well when he first came out of the gate and started the game. And look, that was something that crept up last year, right? He'd start games well, would not finish games well. The one game he did really well against Washington, he came in that game late. So again, that was almost like he was starting in the second half. So it looked like he finished, he was starting in the second half. So, it looked a little bit better. But I think that's something he's got to get better at. Because if he can't do that, he's not going to be anything more than a backup in this league. Because anybody can have a couple of nice drives. You got to be able to, go through some adversity, then be able to bounce back, regroup, and finish strong. It's just not something he's been able to do on a consistent enough basis, whether or not he's starting in a regular season game or in the first preseason game like we saw Sunday. So that, to me, was probably my biggest takeaway from Spencer Rattler. There has to be a sort of an awakening with him. Was like, I've got to focus on finishing strong when I have my opportunity.
Yeah, and with about 5 minutes left, I agree with you. It's got to show in the results. We can watch all of this and we can watch that. We can say this, we can say that. I know the Rat Dad Pack is in a fever, typing in the excuses on why, Spencer Rattler, he wasn't yada, yada, yada. I've seen it. I see you. I hear you.
I know.
I'm not buying it, though, because at the end of the day, Spencer Rattler played almost an entire half of football. He wasn't, again, preseason. It's not like he was playing against a whole lineup of starters. Just like the Saints sat a lot of their starters, the Chargers sat a lot of their starters. Spencer did get some reps with the starting O-line. Jawan Johnson, his starting tight end, was out there, and regardless of that, he played almost a half of football and scored 0 points. We can look at this, we can look at that, but at the end of the day, your quarterback scored 0 points who started that game. He had an opportunity in the red zone. He couldn't make the most of it. Tyler Shuck comes in. Again, it's not like he was phenomenal either. Tyler Shuck made his mistakes, but Tyler Shuck also put points on the board. He led them down to the field to that field goal drive on his first drive of the game, and he also had that touchdown after throwing the pick six. So, yeah, I think Tyler Shuck definitely did, show a lot more than Rattler, because I rewatched it on Monday as well, and I left kind of with the same impression. I'm like, okay, Spencer wasn't bad by any means, but that level of performance, if Spencer performs that same way in preseason games 2 and 3, that's not going to win him the job. That's not going to have him running out of the smoke week 1 in the Dome against Arizona. Tyler Shuck, on the other hand, some more performances like that, especially if he can keep improving at the rate that he's improved over the last, couple weeks, he might be the one.
Yeah, and I'll say this. Shuck was significantly better in Tuesday's practice than Rattler, significantly better. Rattler looked he was just off target. He could have been a little rusty coming back from the game after the day off. But he was just off target, and they split the reps. So he started the practice with the first team, and then Shuck finished the practice with the first team. The finish, though, was that call-it situation. That's what they call it. They call it. Basically, it's unscripted. Shuck does well in those situations. He led the team down to a touchdown, had a nice 4th down conversion on a throw to Rashid Shaheed. Rattler, initially, it was a punt. And then he was winning with the second team, led the second team down. It was a very long, very methodical, but it was a hard drive to really kind of characterize, but it was 16 plays.
Ooh. And
I didn't see exactly where they ended, because where we were, Deuce and I were at the opposite end zone because the way the field's set up. So we were both kind of wondering, okay, where did they get to? Because this has been a really long drive. And it ends and a tip ball interception by Julian Blackmon. So I think for Rattler, he's just got to settle down. Okay, understand, all right, Shuck has caught up in this race, and now he has to respond accordingly. Because what I saw Tuesday didn't look like a confident player, much different than the confident player I saw at the start of camp. So there's going to have to be, he's going to have to regroup a little bit. As for Tyler Shuck, the film that I watched, the 2 minutes I think almost helped him because he had to remove all thinking, and he just kind of, they were playing some off coverage, so he was hitting some pretty easy completions early. Man, if he would have hit that deep ball to Kevin Austin on his second throw, man, how crazy would the conversation have been the following day. But I thought he did really well in certain situations. He actually did a little bit better against the blitz than I initially thought. After I went back and watched it, it wasn't great, but he was a little bit better than I thought. A little bit better than Spencer Rattler in that regard when it came to the blitz, and that's a big factor for me in terms of young quarterbacks. Who handles the pressure where you don't panic the best, I think is certainly a factor. He took a horrible sack, and he almost got hurt for it. There were 3 or 4 different opportunities he had to get rid of that ball, and he had a rookie moment. I mean, he kind of ducked his eyes and almost turned backwards when he had an outlet to throw. He had, plenty of space to run. He even had a guy open downfield where he kind of committed to the safety throw early with that little throw where Velus Jones Jr. just kind of darting to the sideline as the safety valve there. He kind of committed to that too soon and then kind of, readjusted. It was not a good play. The pick six was exactly what I thought with the cover 3 situation where he just committed too soon. And that deep third corner didn't even have to go to his deep third. He jumped the route because he saw Tyler Shuck telegraph it so bad. So I thought it was perfect in the sense that you had a lot to get excited about, but you had a lot of mistakes to build on. So now you can't get a big head. Now you have to focus on improving. And I will say that is a good step to see a guy coming off a preseason opener kind of maintain his momentum into the next practice.
Absolutely, and that's what we'll be looking to see if he can maintain that momentum heading into the Dome this Sunday on Fox 8 when the Saints take on the Jaguars. That'll do it for us. We're out of time. Thanks for joining us again on Overtime. Okay. Make sure to catch us next time on Overtime. For Andre Johnson Jr. in the studio and Sean out in California. Thank you, guys.